Hey guys, welcome to my channel. My name is ReadingBear and I hope you are ready for some more stories. And today, we'll take a look at some new entitled people content. If you enjoyed my content, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel and post some bear emojis in the comment. And now, let's dive right into the stories.
The first story is titled, "Neighbor Stole My Car and Rented Out My Property and Parking Spot to Strangers for Profit." I always knew my neighbors were the type to get involved in get-rich-quick schemes, but I never thought they'd stoop so low as to steal from me. I had an emergency and ended up in the hospital for a few months, and during that time, my neighbors stole my car and rented out my parking spot to strangers for profit. When I returned home, I couldn't believe what I was seeing. My car was missing, and another car was parked in its place. When I inquired about it, the new owner said they had rented the spot from my neighbors. It wasn't until I saw my car for sale online, with my bumper stickers still intact, that I realized what had happened. I messaged the seller under a fake name, pretending to be interested in buying the car. When we met in person, I caught him in the act and called the police. The man was put in handcuffs for grand theft auto and taken to the station. He ended up making a deal to avoid jail time, but I still wished he had gone to jail for what he had done. In the end, justice was served, and the man had to pay for the damages to my car and give me back the money I paid for the parking spot while I was in the hospital. The illegal money he made went to the owner. I thought I was done with my neighbors, but things took an unexpected turn. After the incident, my neighbors were evicted and had to move somewhere else. However, they didn't go quietly. They vandalized my property and left me with a mess to clean up. It was frustrating, but at least they were out of my life for good. Since then, I've made sure to keep an eye on my property and to be careful who I trust. I've also been more proactive about reporting any suspicious activity in the neighborhood to the authorities. It's unfortunate that it had to happen to me, but I hope that by sharing my story, others can learn from my experience and avoid falling victim to similar schemes. Update: a few months after the incident, I received a letter in the mail from the city informing me that my neighbors had been arrested for running an illegal scheme. They were caught renting out various properties they didn't own, and the police had found several stolen cars in their possession. The couple was now facing multiple charges, including grand theft auto and fraud. I was relieved that they were finally caught and held accountable for their actions. The whole ordeal had left me feeling uneasy and vulnerable, and it was good to know that they wouldn't be able to harm anyone else. On the bright side, the experience had also taught me a valuable lesson about the importance of securing my property and being vigilant about who I trust in my community. In the aftermath of the incident, I decided to take some measures to protect myself and my property. I installed security cameras outside my apartment and made sure to keep my car locked at all times. I also made a point to get to know my other neighbors better and to stay informed about any suspicious activity in the area. Over time, my sense of security was restored, and I felt confident in my ability to protect myself and my belongings. I was grateful for the support of my friends and family during the difficult period and for the lessons I learned through the experience. One day, several months after the incident, I was on my way to the grocery store when I saw a familiar face walking towards me. It was my former neighbor, the one who had stolen my car and rented out my parking spot. He looked tired and worn out, and there was a look of shame in his eyes. At first, I was angry and resentful towards him for what he had done, but as we talked, I realized that he was genuinely remorseful for his actions. He told me that he had hit rock bottom and had been struggling to make ends meet since he was evicted from his apartment. He apologized for what he had done and offered to make amends by paying me back for the damages to my car. As we talked, I could sense his sincerity, and I realized that he was a human being who had made a mistake. I decided to forgive him and to give him a second chance. I accepted his offer to pay for the damages to my car, and we ended up talking for several hours. In the end, I realized that forgiveness is a powerful tool that can help heal wounds and bring people together. I was grateful for the opportunity to move on from the past and to build a better future for myself and my community. The experience had taught me the importance of empathy, forgiveness, and trust, and I was grateful for the lessons I had learned. The next story is titled, "You Stay Until the Kitchen is Cleaned." When I was 16, I worked at a fast food chain on a small island. Things are usually very quiet here. We'd take no more than 2,000 pounds in a day, 11 a.m. to 8 p.m. There's an event on the island that brings in a huge number of people from abroad, often doubling the island's population for a month. During the 2-week event, we were open until 11 p.m. with 1 hour at the end of each day allocated to cleaning and closing the store, bringing us until 12 a.m. midnight as our finishing time on a closing shift. During the event, there's a lot of drinking and a lot of people going for takeouts, so we get absolutely swamped. We even have to ship in staff from other stores in the UK to assist, more on them later. We'd close the doors at 11 p.m. but there would still be a huge queue of customers which could easily take 30 meters plus to get through, and then all of those customers are allowed to sit indoors until 12 a.m. when we can kick them out, but often we didn't want to pick a fight with drunks, so we let them leave on their own accord. As you can probably imagine, this makes cleaning the store impossible by 12 a.m. The first night we were there until about 1 a.m., the next night it was closer to 2 a.m. When I asked the area manager about how we were getting paid for these extra hours, he said we were only to be paid until 12 a.m. as that was our shift on the rota. I said that I don't want to be working 2 to 3 hours each night, morning, for nothing, to which he replied, "You stay until everything is cleaned like everybody else. If I find out you leave without properly cleaning everything, we're going to have a problem." I went home, talked to my parents about it, and we made a plan. So on my next shift it was chaos, busier than I've ever seen it. Queue out the door and halfway up the street. We weren't able to start cleaning until at least 12:30. The place was a mess, and it ended up being about 3:30 before I called my mum to come pick me up. I was wired on energy drinks just to keep awake, and when I got home I couldn't sleep at all, and I was scheduled in for a 9 a.m. start the next, current morning. I slept for about 2 hours before I had to drag myself out of bed to get ready for work again and operate pressurized fryers filled with approximately 350 degrees Celsius oil. What could go wrong, right? The reason I called her for a lift home was so there was a record of it happening, and I also stood near one of the cameras so there was a recording with audio on the shop CCTV. The law where I live clearly states that anybody under 18 is required to have at least 8 hours away from the workplace in any 24-hour period. That obviously didn't happen, so they broke the law, and my mum knew this. She called up the area manager to ask him what happened. He basically repeated what he had said to me, and she mentioned to him about the law and that by informing him of it, it's now 100% his responsibility and he would be liable for anything that happened during my shift, whether that's property damage, injury, etc. She also said she'd be reporting it to the equivalent of a union. We don't have unions here. He was used to bullying the staff here, as most were teens or young adults who were too scared to stand up to him, but he very quickly changed his attitude now that his neck was on the line. He called the local manager and told him to let me leave work for the day, with full pay, immediately, and as soon as it hit 12 a.m. on the next closing shift, I was again ordered to go home, so no more working without being paid. Once the other staff got wind of this, they followed suit. This had another extra bonus for us all though, which was probably the sweetest part of this. Remember the staff they shipped over? Well, they all got early shifts so they could go out and enjoy the partying that went on while we were all stuck in work until 3 a.m. They even had the cheek to come in, because they had keys, and have a dig at us about taking so long, which resulted in an argument and one of them crying. Anyway, the cleaning that we weren't able to do then became their problem when they arrived in the morning, which meant they had to either start earlier or work like crazy to get the shop open in time, or they'd face the wrath of the area manager. Duck them and duck the area manager. The last story is titled, "Use the Law to Withhold My Deposit?" Well, okay, here we go. This was a few years ago, so some of the details are a little fuzzy, but I smile every time I think about this. I moved to California in 2010 and had lined up a house on a 3-acre property with a nice-sized detached barn. We were on a rent-to-own, to allow time to get settled, and secure the loan to buy the property. So, we had a standard California rental agreement. With the handshake agreement it would not be needed once we purchased the house. A couple little things to fill in. The female owner was a realtor, so there was a reasonable expectation she knew what she was doing. The husband was weird. I cannot explain it past that. But part of the agreement was we actually bought the horse that was boarded on the property, and also, they had the detached barn full of their old crap, with the agreement that it would be removed by the owners once we purchased. So, we move in, things are going fairly good. We have several cats at the time, but keep the house cleaned up, and we had one cat prone to accidents, but for the most part, we kept everything good. Sometime during the winter, we have an issue with the septic system. The owner proceeds to let it slip the septic was not put in legally and was not correct. Okay, they still paid for the repairs. A month or so later, a water line the husband installed to use for watering the horse broke, and again, find out it was not done correctly. This time I was forced to pay for it. Okay, cool. Once I found out about the septic, I started looking for other houses, and found one available, and we were able to get it. At this point, I give the owner about 2 months' notice. We had done some improvements on the property, including a tack shed, for all the horse gear. My stepdaughter loved horses, and the horse was hers. So almost immediately, the owner's attitude changes, and I realize we are in for a long 2 months. We are slowly moving into the new house, as we have time. During this time, the owner was randomly showing up without 24 hours notice, CA law, attempting to show the house with zero warning, and the best one, she started inspecting the house before we were even moved out. At this point, we were about 75% moved. The new house was on 12.5 acres, and we did not have a pen to put the horse and goats into. One day, I get home from work, and we have to call a vet out. Owner's daughter, who used to own the horse, decided to give the horse and our 2 goats a year's worth of glucosamine supplements for the horse. We ended up with a several $100 vet bill. So, we sped things up, and ended up clearing a few weeks early. Because of this, there were a few odds and ends left behind, including a wooden run-to for the goats. I spent about $500 on cleaning alone to make sure we got our deposit back. I even brought in a professional cleaning service to finish the house up. I spent many times moving from base housing while military. This is common, so we complete the final walkthrough with the owner, and she seems happy. She says she will figure everything out and send me a check. Okay, cool. About 4 weeks after the original move-out date, I get a large manila envelope in the mail, from the owner. Strange, but okay, cool. I open it, and she is trying to charge me in the neighborhood of $2,500 on top of the $2,000 deposit she is keeping. Okay lady, let's see what you got. In the envelope is about 10 small mailer envelopes, and about 300-ish pictures of various things on the property and in the house. Along with a 6-page letter outlining what I owe her for. So, I start reading, couple hundred for trash removal, including a list of items removed, and the receipt for removal, several hundred for paint. During the walkthrough I offered to paint the rooms we had painted. One was an obnoxious cotton candy pink, and the owner said no, it was fine. There is also a charge for close to $3,000 for brand new carpeting and high-end padding from Lowe's, as well as the receipt, and also a itemized charge for labor. I believe there were a few other items, but I don't have the paperwork in front of me. Now, my first reaction was pure rage. I was seeing red. I wrote the nastiest letter to her 3 different times and took a step back. She had threatened to take me to court. Cue malicious compliance. I pulled up California rental laws. And at the time, there was a great website that explained what an owner could legally charge you for. So, I sat down, and I believe the entire letter I responded to her with was around 15 pages. The highlights. I was not responsible for the painting or labor associated with, as I provided the final inspection that did not note any issues with paint color. I was not responsible for the trash removal, as she listed one item that was ours, the plywood run-to in the field, and the items actually listed were all her personal items removed from the detached barn, and it was not my responsibility. I was not responsible for paying the emergency plumbing repair, mentioned earlier, and I provided the bill and the fact it was an emergency, as it was flooding over half the property, and making entrance to the property impossible. The best one was the last one. The carpets. So, in her letter, she mentioned a horrible smell of cat urine, which she proceeds to explain occurred during the illegal inspections. She also had provided documentation on the cost of materials, including all her purchases. The best part? They were all dated prior to our final walkthrough. No matter the result, she was replacing that carpet. So, California law is very specific on what the owner can charge for carpets. At the final walkthrough, she was okay with the carpets, but then changed her mind a few days later. So, I explained, to the letter, that I was responsible for roughly 1/30th of the cost of replacement, as she graciously showed me the 10-year-old carpet was good for 30 years. So due to the fact it was normal wear and tear, I agreed to cover that portion. It was only a couple hundred. Now in her letter, she threatened legal action as well. So, I put everything together, including a final breakdown of what was owed to her, and what was owed to me, and it was close to $1,500. I also informed her I was ready to take the case to court if she didn't agree with me, as that was the next legal step. About a month later, she had 30 days to respond. I get a check for $1,250, and a short note saying she expected this issue was considered resolved. I have never smiled so much cashing a check. Thank you for listening.